Okay, so our game is getting better, but now it's time to add a little bit of user interface. And before we actually do something that will stick in our game for, forever, because it's going to be in our game, let's just do a few examples on how to use the Unity's UI system. So first of all, there's a special type of game object that's called a canvas, and this is where you actually put all the UI elements. They are created kind of separately, and first of all, you need to create a canvas before you start to create images and buttons and toggle buttons and all that. So go to game object, UI, and there are these options here. These are pretty much pre-programmed UI items that you can edit and customize them and create your own thing. And there's this canvas option here, and you can either click on canvas to make one, or you can click on image or text or button to add these elements. But whenever you click on any of these buttons, a canvas will be instantiated before. So anything that you create is going to be attached to a canvas. So let's say that I want to create an image, for example. You can see here that there's this canvas. We're not going to deal with this that much because it's basically something that has to be there for event handling, for collision handling and all of that. So you actually deal with what's parented to the canvas. For example, this image. So if you click on this, double click to focus, and if you zoom out, this white border here, this is the screen. So if you change the aspect ratio, you can see that this area changes as well. I'm gonna stick with my regular aspect ratio, and just use this tool here to move your elements as you would do with regular sprites. So you can move them. There's a nice snapping tool here, so stuff will stick to to the center of the screen and all of that. So this is nice, and you can just scale them and all of that. As you can see, this is a white image, so you can go on this source image option here and choose any sprite to be your image. For example, this star sphere here. They are kind of stretched. You have this option to stretch them, I don't know, as much as you want, but there's also this option called preserve aspect, which will kind of ignore any kind of stretching you do. So now this image is in an original aspect ratio. There's also this nice image type property. Simple is basically for a simple image, but there are a few options that you can choose here, and one that I like a lot is the field option. So the field option basically lets you control the filling of this image by this fill amount property, and it's kind of hard to explain, but once you start playing with this, you can see what it does. For example, this is gonna radially fill my image using this parameter. So 0 means no fill at all, and 1 means totally filled. And you can use, for example, the horizontal fill method to kind of create a loading image or something like that, because this parameter controls how much of that image is going to be shown. Okay. One of the not so nice things about the UI is that the size of these images, they change so much depending on the size of the screen. For example, it looks nice for this size of the screen that I have here, but in case I put this on full screen by putting my mouse cursor on the game tab and hitting shift space, it gets really small. And there are a few options you can use to kind of bypass this, and they have to do with this anchor here. So this anchor here, there are basically 4 points here for pickers, and the area inside those pickers represent the amount of scaling that is going to be applied to this particular image when the game tab scales up. So for example, the area inside the speakers is 0 because they're close to each other. So if I hit shift space, there's no scaling happening on this UI element. But if I, for example, wrap this element with the speakers, and if I hit shift space, the stars, they will scale up proportionally. All right, so they're using kind of this left side of the game view, and if I expand this, they still are using this left side of the game view. So this is a nice trick. Whenever you want your image to scale accordingly to the amount of scale that you apply on the game view, you just wrap the sprite using the speakers, and it's gonna work pretty nicely. You can also choose anchors. So let's say that I want to keep this image always anchored to the left side of my screen, so you can just choose this middle left anchor, for example, and your image will always keep the distance to the middle left of the screen constant. Okay, if you had, for example, the regular anchor, you can see it varies accordingly to how am I scaling the game view. And if, for example, if you keep that on the middle left, it's going to keep this distance constant. So this is what it does. Of course, there are more UI elements that you can add. For example, there's a button that you can add here. Oops, UI button. Here it is. And a button basically consists of two elements. One is an image, which is the parent. It has this button script here where you can control the color multipliers for specific states. And if you expand this, there's also a text. The text is not really something that has to be here, so you can easily get rid of this. And you just have to stick with this button component here, because this is actually what gives the button attributes. So if you hit play, this is interactable, so when I hover this, you can see that it changes the color accordingly to this highlight color. So let's say that I change this to a reddish, and when I go here, it turns red because the highlight color is set to red. When I press, it goes to this pressed color, which is kind of gray, and it takes this fade duration to go from one state to another. And this is pretty much the two elements that we're going to be using to build the whole interface of our game. We're going to use images and buttons, and we're going to customize them in such a way that it will turn out being a pretty nice user interface. So in this video, I kind of just wanted to give you an overview of how the user interface system works. And in the next video, we're actually going to start building the UI system and coding it, because there are some stuff that need to be coded. For example, events, when you click a button, what happens, and some other nice things that you will see in the next lesson.